In this episode, we focus on a security topic that is so common it can feel boring, but it sits underneath almost every other control you rely on: how an organization handles passwords and authentication. Passwords are still used everywhere, from employee accounts to administrative portals to service access, and attackers still succeed every day by stealing, guessing, or reusing them. Modern authenticator policies go beyond pick a strong password and aim for a consistent, realistic system of identity proof that works across devices, applications, and teams. Standardize is the key word, because inconsistent rules create weak spots that attackers can target, and confusion causes people to invent their own shortcuts. Organization-wide also matters because authentication is only as strong as the weakest important account, and attackers often start with a low-privilege account before climbing toward high-privilege systems. By the end, you should be able to explain why password standards alone are not enough, what modern authentication policies try to accomplish, and how consistent rules reduce both security risk and user frustration in environments that include sensitive payment systems. Before we continue, a quick note: this audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A useful first step is understanding why passwords fail so often, even when people are not trying to be careless. Humans have limited memory, and when an organization asks people to create long, complex passwords that must be changed frequently, many people respond with predictable coping strategies. They reuse passwords across sites, write them down in unsafe places, or make only small changes when forced to rotate. Attackers take advantage of this reality with techniques like phishing, credential stuffing, and brute force guessing against exposed login pages. Beginners should notice that many attacks do not crack passwords through advanced math. They steal them, trick people into revealing them, or reuse them from other breaches. This is why standardizing password rules is not about making life harder. It is about aligning policy with real human behavior so that the policy actually improves security rather than producing fragile compliance. If your rules reliably cause people to create predictable patterns, your rules are helping attackers. A modern authenticator policy starts by acknowledging these realities and designing controls that reduce reliance on human memory alone. Standardization begins with setting clear password requirements that aim for strength without encouraging harmful habits. A strong password is one that is hard to guess and hard to brute force. But strength is not only about complexity. Symbols, length, and unpredictability matter more in many cases. Beginners should also understand that forcing frequent password changes can backfire for ordinary users because it increases reuse and predictable variations, which attackers can guess. A modern approach often focuses on longer passwords, discouraging known bad passwords, and changing passwords when there is evidence of compromise rather than on a rigid calendar. It also includes rules that prevent trivial patterns, like repeating characters or common sequences, because attackers check those early. Standardization means everyone follows the same baseline rules rather than each application inventing different requirements that confuse users and create inconsistent security. When password rules are consistent, users can form good habits, support teams can enforce them more easily, and attackers have fewer weak edges to exploit. Password storage and handling are as important as password creation rules, because even strong user passwords can be compromised if systems store them incorrectly. Beginners should understand that systems should not store readable passwords, and instead should store protected representations designed to resist theft and cracking. This is one of those topics where the high-level principle is enough for a beginner. The system should store passwords in a way that makes stealing the password database far less useful to an attacker. Good storage practices also include limiting who can access authentication databases and protecting backups that contain authentication material. Another handling risk is logging, because systems sometimes accidentally record passwords or tokens in logs during troubleshooting, and those logs can have wide access and long retention. Standardization includes making sure all applications follow the same safe rules for handling credentials, including not printing them to logs, not sending them through insecure channels, and not storing them in configuration files. When storage and handling are standardized, you reduce the chance that one weak application undermines the entire authentication program. Modern authenticator policies also focus on reducing password exposure through better login defenses. Rate limiting, account lockout behavior, and detection of unusual login patterns help prevent brute force and credential stuffing from succeeding at scale. Beginners should notice that these controls must be balanced, because overly aggressive lockouts can be abused by attackers to deny service by locking out user accounts. A more mature approach might include progressive delays, monitoring for suspicious patterns, and requiring additional verification when risk signals appear. Another important defense is monitoring for leaked credentials, because many compromises begin when an attacker tries known leaked passwords on a new target. When organizations monitor for compromised credentials and require password changes in response, they reduce the value of credential reuse. Standardization matters here because if only some systems enforce rate limiting or compromised password checks, attackers will target the weak systems. Organization-wide policies ensure that exposed login surfaces follow consistent protections and that attackers cannot simply shop for the easiest doorway. Multi-factor authentication, MFA, is one of the most important elements of modern authenticator policy because it adds a second proof beyond the password. Beginners should understand that MFA does not eliminate password risk, but it significantly reduces the chance that a stolen password alone is enough to take over an account. The second factor can be something you have, like an authenticator app or hardware token, or something you are, like a biometric, and the goal is to make the attacker's job harder. However, MFA must be implemented thoughtfully because some methods are more resistant to phishing and interception than others. Modern policy often encourages stronger MFA methods that are harder to trick, and it applies stronger requirements to high-risk accounts like administrators. Standardization is essential because if MFA is optional or inconsistent, attackers will target accounts where it is not enforced. A mature policy also includes enrollment discipline, backup methods, and recovery procedures, because if people cannot recover access safely, they will create shortcuts that weaken security. Account recovery is a place where many authentication programs quietly fail, because recovery paths can become the easiest way for attackers to bypass strong login controls. Beginners should think of recovery as a second door into the account, and if that second door is weak, the first door does not matter. Recovery might involve email, help desk calls, security questions, or temporary codes, and each method has risks if it can be socially engineered or intercepted. A modern authenticator policy defines strict recovery procedures, especially for privileged accounts, and often requires higher assurance for recovery than for normal logins. It also ensures that recovery actions are logged, reviewed, and limited, because attackers may attempt repeated recovery attempts. Standardization helps because it prevents some systems from having weak recovery mechanisms that attackers can exploit, and it gives help desk teams clear scripts and verification steps. When recovery is treated as part of the authentication lifecycle, the overall program becomes stronger and less vulnerable to human manipulation. Privileged accounts deserve special attention because they can change system reality, and modern authenticator policies typically treat them differently from ordinary user accounts. Beginners should connect this to the earlier discussions about hardened administrative pathways and dual control, because privileged access is where small failures become large incidents. Privileged accounts should have strong, unique passwords, enforced MFA, restricted login locations, and short session lifetimes for sensitive actions. They should also be separate from everyday browsing accounts, because everyday activity increases exposure to phishing and malware. Standardizing these rules across the organization helps prevent the common problem where some administrators follow strict practices while others rely on convenience. It also ensures that privileged access to payment systems and key management systems is protected consistently, because those systems are among the most sensitive. When privileged account policies are standard, the organization reduces the chance that an attacker can escalate from a low-privilege foothold to full control through weak admin authentication. Service accounts and non-human identities also need standardized policies, because modern environments include automation, integrations, and processes that authenticate without a person typing a password. Beginners sometimes assume authentication is only about people, but machine-to-machine authentication can be a major risk if secrets are hard-coded, shared widely, or never rotated. A modern authenticator policy includes rules for how service credentials are created, stored, rotated, and monitored. It also includes limiting service account permissions to least privilege, because a compromised service identity can provide powerful access across systems. Standardization prevents teams from creating ad hoc service accounts that live forever and accumulate permissions, which is a common source of hidden risk. It also ensures that service identities are inventoried and that their usage can be monitored for unusual behavior. When service authentication is managed with the same seriousness as human authentication, the organization closes a major set of attacker pathways that are otherwise easy to overlook. User experience and usability are not side topics in authentication policy, because the best security policy is the one people can actually follow. If password rules are too complex, if MFA prompts are confusing, or if login flows fail frequently, people will resist and create unsafe workarounds. Beginners should understand that usability is a security property in human systems, because confusing policies lead to predictable mistakes. Standardization helps here too, because users encounter fewer surprises and learn a single set of expectations. Training also matters, especially around phishing-resistant habits like verifying login prompts, recognizing suspicious approval requests, and understanding that no legitimate support staff should ask for your password. A modern authenticator program treats users as part of the security system, not as obstacles, and it designs policies that guide behavior rather than punish it. When usability is considered, adoption improves, and adoption is what makes the security improvements real. As we close, remember that standardizing passwords and modern authenticator policies organization-wide is about making identity proof consistent, resilient, and realistic across the entire environment. Strong password practices are still important, but modern policies reduce reliance on passwords alone by enforcing MFA, strengthening login defenses, and closing weak recovery pathways. Privileged accounts and service identities receive higher assurance controls because they carry higher impact, and consistency prevents attackers from finding the weakest doorway. Standardization also supports monitoring and response, because authentication events become easier to interpret and correlate when rules are consistent across systems. The result is an organization where authentication is not a patchwork of incompatible rules, but a coherent system that people can follow and defenders can trust. In payment environments, where compromised credentials can lead directly to sensitive systems and data, that coherence is one of the most practical and powerful ways to reduce risk over time.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.